The mirror stood directly in front of her, an ordinary rectangular surface with a worn white border. It said nothing. It made no sounds. It had no intentions. But every time she looked at it, what it reflected back was not just an image, it was an accusation. She was 17 years old. Her name was Clara. She weighed 84 pounds. Her skin had lost the warm tone it had when she ran in the park as a child. Now it was pale, with purple shadows under her eyes. But even so, Clara didn't see it. What she saw were legs that were too big, arms that still had fat, a face that didn't deserve to be shown. Every morning was a ritual. She woke up before everyone else in the house. She walked barefoot down the creaking wooden hallway, almost silently. She locked herself in the bathroom, and there, in front of the mirror, the ordeal began. First, she lifted her shirt. She touched her ribs as if searching for a secret. Then, she turned sideways, looking at her profile. Sometimes she pinched the skin of her abdomen. She always found something she didn't like. Her expression never changed. It was cold, mechanical, as if she weren't looking at her own body, but at that of an enemy. It wasn't hate she felt. It was disappointment. Because with each passing day, she expected to wake up different. Lighter. More correct. More like those girls she followed on anonymous accounts, where skeletal bodies were celebrated with comments like, angelic, pure, steel discipline, and if the mirror said otherwise, then she was wrong. At school, Clara was invisible, not because of her appearance, but because of her energy. She walked with her shoulders forward, avoiding other people's eyes. She always wore long sleeves, even on hot days, and when someone greeted her, she responded with a tight, polite, but empty smile. The biology teacher had been observing her for weeks. She had noticed that Clara no longer participated as she used to, that her handwriting, once neat and round, now trembled, but she said nothing. No one did. Her mother was the only one who noticed anything strange. "You're so thin," she would sometimes say. Clara would just shrug. "It's just her age," she would mutter, as if teenage growth were some kind of miracle diet. Secretly, her mother would leave bread and jam in her backpack. Clara would throw it in the school trash without opening it. Every night, before going to sleep, she would look through photos of extremely thin bodies, the thinspirations, as they were known. Girls with prominent ribs, deep collarbones, thighs that didn't touch. Clara looked at them like someone studying a map to salvation. And then, she would look at herself in the mirror again, under the dim light of the bathroom. She always found something else to eliminate. A curve, a shadow, an extra centimeter. The digital bathroom scale was hidden behind the toilet. Only she knew its location. Stepping on it was an almost sacred act. Every number lower than the day before was a silent victory. But even if she stepped off, the mirror still said the same thing. It's not enough. Sometimes Clara thought maybe the mirror was broken, or miscalibrated. What if everyone else saw her as thinner, but she still saw this distorted figure? What if there was something wrong with her brain? But instead of searching for answers, she clung even more tightly to the punishment. Because deep down, she had only learned to feel valuable when she suffered. One afternoon, while changing clothes in front of the mirror, she noticed something new. Her navel seemed deeper, her chest flatter. A shiver ran down her spine. For a second, she felt afraid. Her body was disappearing. But instead of stopping, she gritted her teeth and smiled. It was the first time the mirror did not contradict her. That night, she went to sleep hungry, a familiar, almost comforting sensation. For her, hunger wasn't a symptom. It was a sign of success, of self-control, of power. She felt that the rest of the world ate out of weakness, and that she, by resisting, was superior. But that victory came at a high price. The next morning, her nose bled for no apparent reason. When she bent down, she felt like everything was spinning. Her knees ached. She didn't have the strength to carry her backpack. But none of that mattered, because the image in the mirror, the broken and distorted version of herself, wasn't ready yet. Clara didn't know that the worst thing wasn't her weight, or her paleness, or her prominent bones. The worst part was that his mind had become a prison where there was only one rule: until you disappear, you don't deserve to exist. Every morning, Clara woke up before the sun peeked through the window. Her eyelids opened without an alarm, as if her body knew it was time to appear before the cruelest tribunal, the scales. It wasn't a habit, it was a command, a duty. The bathroom floor was always cold. She liked that feeling. It reminded her that she was still alive. She walked slowly, as if she didn't want to wake the house, but also because she had no energy. Her fragile body sometimes trembled, but she kept going. The trial couldn't wait. She carefully lifted the digital scale she kept hidden behind the laundry basket. She placed it on the tiles, making sure it was perfectly level, without any tilt. The slightest error could affect the reading, and the reading was sacred. She took off her clothes, even her underwear. She tied her hair up in a bun so it wouldn't weigh extra. She took a deep breath and went upstairs. She closed her eyes for a second. Then she opened them and read. Sometimes the number was lower, and that was relief, a silent sigh, an invisible victory. Other times it was the same. That was tension, a warning, a reminder that I had to do more. But if the number increased, even by a few tenths, the day was ruined. In those days, she didn't speak to anyone. She shut herself away in her world of silence and self-punishment. She walked more. She drank only water. She gritted her teeth in class when her stomach growled, and she looked at herself in the mirror with contempt, as if that weight gain were a personal betrayal. The scales weren't lying, she thought. She was the one who was wrong. In her black notebook, she recorded every number. For months, she had been tracking every fluctuation, every dip, every relapse. It was her control diary. She didn't write down feelings or dreams there, only numbers, and those numbers defined everything else. One day, in the school hallway, a teacher approached her and said, "You've lost weight, Clara." The teacher smiled, as if it were a compliment. Clara smiled too, but inside, something was breaking, because if others noticed, it was perhaps because things were getting out of hand. The contradiction consumed her. She wanted to disappear, but she didn't want anyone to know. At lunchtime, Clara had her rituals. She would open the Tupperware container of food her mother had prepared for her. It usually contained rice, chicken, and some vegetables. Clara would stir everything with her fork, chop it into tiny pieces, and move it around. She would eat only a bite or two. The rest she would wrap in a napkin and hide. When no one was looking, he would throw it in the trash. Once, a classmate asked her why she ate so little. Clara replied matter-of-factly, "I'm not hungry." No one suspected a thing. She was the quiet girl, the good student, the one who never got into trouble. At home, things were no different. At dinner, she pretended to be full. "I ate something at school," she'd say. And her mother, tired from work, accepted the excuse. Her father barely spoke. Her younger brother was in his own world. Clara became invisible right before their eyes. Control was their way of existing. But sometimes that control crumbled. There were nights when anxiety overwhelmed her. She would eat something, a piece of bread, a cookie, and then the guilt, the rage, the silent crying. She would go to the bathroom, kneel before the toilet, and vomit. She didn't always succeed, but it was the thought that mattered, because it was all about not giving in. One Friday night, after such an episode, she sat in front of the scale without stepping on it. She looked at it as if it were a person, as if it were speaking to her. "What am I worth today?" she thought, and for a moment, she wished the number would disappear, that the machine would stop working, that the world would stop measuring her. But the next day, she was there again, naked, cold, shivering, silently climbing a board, hoping the number would forgive her. The scale was her cruelest mirror. It didn't reflect her body. It reflected her obsession. And the worst part of all, she knew it. Clara hadn't always been an expert at hiding. At first, her decline was slow, almost imperceptible, like a shadow that crept along silently. But over time, she learned to transform into two people, the Clara the world saw, and the Clara who lived locked inside her own head, measuring every gesture, every word, every bite. She became an actress unintentionally. Her family suspected nothing because Clara was a master of deception. She had studied, with almost academic dedication, how to move a fork, how to fake a bite, how to leave crumbs on the edge of the plate, or barely stain her lips to make it seem as if she had eaten. She watched movies, series, videos, not for entertainment, but to analyze how people interacted with food, how they chewed, how long it took, how they put their cutlery away when they finished. He imitated everything, with surgical precision. During breakfast, while her mother made coffee, Clara would take a biscuit, take a tiny bite, barely a touch between her teeth, and then wrap it in a napkin as her mother looked out the window. She would throw it in her school bag before leaving the house. Sometimes she would get up from the table saying there was something left in her room, and then she would hide the food in the desk drawer to get rid of it later. Her room was a museum of deception. Empty wrappers, crumbs, crumpled napkins, all evidence of a life no one saw. At school, her tactics were even more subtle. At lunch, she would greet her friends with a small smile, sit down with them, take out her lunchbox, and begin her performance. She would chop the chicken into tiny pieces, move it around, mix it with the rice as if she were measuring proportions, and occasionally raise her fork to her mouth, but she almost never ate. When someone was watching her, she would take a bite, a necessary sacrifice. Then she would go to the bathroom and make sure no one followed her. She would open the trash can, wrap the food scraps in toilet paper, and throw them in the back. She would look at herself in the bathroom mirror afterward. Her sunken eyes betrayed her, but her expression remained resolute. Clara kept telling herself that deceiving the world wasn't evil, it was survival. Her mother trusted her so much that she never thought to check her backpack or her room. Clara was the responsible daughter, the quiet one, the one who never raised her voice or argued. She was the perfect girl, the girl who didn't cause any trouble. She knows how to take care of herself, her mother would say when her grandmother commented that Clara was too thin. The grandmother would frown, but she didn't insist. Her mother's word was law. Her father, physically present but emotionally absent, would come home late from work, eat without looking at her, and shut himself away to watch television. He never asked if she had eaten dinner or how she was feeling. Clara knew she couldn't expect anything from him, and that absence became freedom, the freedom to disappear without anyone noticing. One night, her mother decided to cook her favorite dish, homemade tomato soup. The smell filled the house. Clara smelled it from her room, and something stirred inside her. Hunger, yes, but also panic, because that dish was hard to fake. She couldn't cut it or easily hide it. She had to act differently. She sat down at the table. Her fingers trembled under the tablecloth, but her face was a calm mask. "Are you going to try it, darling?" her mother asked in a hopeful tone. Clara held the spoon. She barely filled it. She brought it to her lips but didn't swallow. When her mother turned her head to speak to her father, Clara tilted the spoon onto the napkin placed on her lap. The liquid soaked it completely. The napkin absorbed almost all of it. Clara discreetly folded another one on top, forming a small ball that she would later take to the bathroom. "Very delicious," Clara said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her mother sighed in relief. That relief was a dagger. Clara wanted to scream. She wanted to tell him, "I'm not okay." She wanted to cry in his arms like when she was a child and fell in the playground. But her inner voice, the one that had grown along with her illness, was stronger. "If they find out, they will arrest you." And stopping meant eating, gaining weight, losing the only sense of control she still had left. So he continued pretending. She pretended to be full after half a glass of water. She pretended to be busy when her mother wanted to have dinner with the family. She pretended to be tired, so she wouldn't have to go out to eat with her friends. It had been months since she'd eaten ice cream, since she'd touched a piece of bread without feeling guilty, since she'd tasted a piece of fruit without hearing herself repeat, "You don't need it." Every lie had a price. Her body grew weaker day by day. Her bones protruded, but she remained convinced she was just overweight. Her muscles no longer responded as they once did. The school stairs became an insurmountable mountain to climb. Her period had stopped months ago. Her nails were brittle, but none of it stopped her. He had learned to deceive others, but the most dangerous thing was that she had learned to deceive herself. One afternoon, on her way home from school, she felt a sharp, sudden pain in her chest. She stopped in the middle of the road and took a deep breath. The world spun a little. Her hands were freezing. She wanted to lean against a wall, but she didn't want anyone to see her vulnerable. She didn't want anyone to ask questions. She didn't want attention. He kept walking as best he could, step by step, each step a titanic effort. When she got home, her mother was in the kitchen. Clara silently dropped her backpack and locked herself in the bathroom. She stared at her collarbones protruding like broken wings, her ribs poking out like taut strings beneath her skin. There was a part of her that knew she was sick. She knew it. But that voice was minimal, almost a whisper, and it was quickly drowned out by the other, the stronger one, the one that said, "Just a little more, just one more day, just 1 kilo less. That night, while everyone slept, Clara looked at herself in the mirror again. She did it with the light off, as if she were afraid to truly see herself. Her silhouette was fragile, smaller than ever. But his mind kept telling him it wasn't enough. There was one person in Clara's life who, unintentionally, ended up pushing her deeper into darkness. Officer, she wasn't her best friend, nor her closest companion. She was simply a girl who, like her, seemed to carry a pain that the rest of the world ignored. Luna was 16 years old, with a beautiful but weary face, and a gait that revealed each step weighed more heavily on her than she cared to admit. Her gaze was always lost in some unspoken thought. Perhaps that's why she connected with Clara. Both were invisible in a world that celebrated superficiality. They met in the school bathroom, an accidental encounter. Clara was washing her hands when she heard a soft sob coming from the last stall. She hesitated for a moment. Then, with a mixture of shyness and curiosity, she knocked on the door. "Are you okay?" she asked in a small voice. There was silence. Then, the door opened slightly. Luna looked at it with moist eyes. She was pale, enveloped in an obvious fragility. "Yes, I just got dizzy," she lied. But Clara recognized that tone. She had used it 1,000 times to mask her own struggles. She didn't press the issue. She simply handed her a damp towel and stayed by her side while they both pretended not to know what was happening. They didn't need words. They were two broken mirrors looking at each other. During the following weeks, they began to spend more time together. They sat in the same corner of the courtyard, where almost no one went. They shared long silences, glances that spoke volumes, and short phrases that carried immense weight. One afternoon, while they were waiting for the last class, Luna asked her a question that Clara would never forget. "Do you ever feel like you lose something every time you eat?" Clara felt a lump in her throat. She didn't answer, but her silence was enough. That day, unintentionally, without malice, Luna opened a door that Clara didn't yet know was dangerous. A doorway where they shared secrets, fears, and obsessions that no one else understood. Although neither said it aloud, they were both too wounded to be a safe haven for each other. Luna became the only person with whom Clara didn't need to pretend. I could confess things to her that I would never say at home, that the mirror punished her, that food terrified her, that control was the only way to feel alive. Luna understood every word, every gesture, and that understanding was a dangerous mixture of comfort and abyss. There were no instructions. There were no techniques. What they shared was deeper than that. Shared the same distortion, the same mistaken belief that their body was their enemy, the same inner voice that condemned them daily. And in that sick complicity, they began to sink together. One Friday, in art class, the teacher asked them to draw a version of themselves. Clara took the pencil with trembling hands. She tried to draw herself as she looked, but something strange happened. The drawing turned out to be an enormous figure, with exaggerated proportions, heavy, overflowing. When it was over, Luna went over to see her. "Is that you?" he asked gently. Clara lowered her gaze. Luna looked at the drawing and, instead of correcting her, instead of saying, "It's not real," she simply said, "I draw myself like that too." That was the moment Clara felt a definitive bond, as if they were both survivors of the same shipwreck. But neither of them realized that, in reality, they were dragging each other into even deeper waters. Over time, Luna began to miss classes. When she returned, she was thinner, weaker, more lost. Clara noticed, but said nothing. She didn't feel entitled to comment on a pain so similar to her own. One day, on a cold afternoon, they met behind the gym. It was their secret spot. Luna was shivering, wrapped in an oversized jacket. Her eyes were red, as if she hadn't slept. "My mom says I'm exaggerating," Luna whispered. "That it's just a phase." Clara felt anger, because she knew that phrase, because her own family repeated it too, with ignorance disguised as concern. "You're not exaggerating," Clara replied. "I believe you." Luna closed her eyes tightly, as if that phrase were the first emotional caress she had received in months. "Thank you," she said in a whisper. "Nobody else does." And there, in that hidden corner of the school, they both created a bubble where their pain was allowed, where their darkest thoughts weren't judged, where each found validation in the other. But that validation, unintentionally, reinforced the illness. One afternoon, after physical education, Clara saw Luna faint near the locker rooms. She didn't fall immediately. She clung to a bench, gasping for breath, her skin paler than ever. Clara ran to her. "Luna, what's wrong?" Luna tried to smile. He tried to say that he was fine, but the lie was no longer sustainable. Clara felt afraid. For the first time, real fear, because Luna's suffering was an exact reflection of his own, but intensified, made visible, raw. That day, when they both returned home, something changed in Clara. A small seed of alarm began to germinate. It was not full awareness, nor an intention to improve, nor a desire to recover. It was just a mild discomfort, a fleeting thought that said, "What if this isn't normal? What if this is going too far?" It was a faint thought, almost imperceptible, but it was the first crack in the perfect wall he had built. That night, Clara looked at herself in the mirror as usual. But this time, seeing his ribs showing, he saw no control. He saw Luna. He saw her paleness, his dizziness, his fading away. And for a moment, very brief but real, she felt afraid of becoming even more like her. It wasn't enough to change. Not yet. But it was enough so that, for the first time, the mirror did not reflect just a lie. I would also return a warning. The school bathroom had always been a quiet refuge for Clara, a place where she could hide from the noise, the stares, the questions no one asked, but that she feared would one day come. There, behind a metal door with peeling paint, she found a few minutes of calm before going back to pretending everything was normal. That Thursday, the day everything changed, the sky was gray. It seemed like a warning that no one knew how to read. Clara walked down the corridor, books clutched to her chest. Her steps were slow, almost dragging. For days she had felt a weariness she couldn't shake, a weight on her eyelids, a constant trembling in her hands, a chill that seeped into her bones even in the sun. But she didn't tell anyone. She didn't want any alarms. She didn't want any intervention. She didn't want to lose what little control she thought she had. Recess had just started when she decided to go to the bathroom. She didn't intend to stay long. She just wanted to sit for a minute, breathe, and regain her focus. As she entered, the echo of her footsteps resonated in the empty space. The bathroom was lit by flickering fluorescent tubes, casting a cold glow that made her look even paler in the mirror. She leaned against the sink and took a deep breath. Once, twice, 3 times. But its reflection moved as if the glass were water. She blinked. Everything was spinning around her. She felt that the skin on her arms was too light, as if it didn't belong to a real body. It was a strange, unsettling sensation, but she forced herself to ignore it. "I'm just tired," she murmured to herself, though her voice trembled. She went to one of the stalls, closed the door, and sat on the toilet seat. She clenched her fists on her knees. The trembling wouldn't stop. Her heart beat irregularly, as if she'd forgotten the rhythm. She tried to inhale deeply, but the air wouldn't fill her lungs. Then, a sharp pain pierced his chest. Clara leaned forward, bracing her hands against the cubicle wall. Everything went blurry. The lights looked like white dots bursting in the darkness. He tried to get up. He tried to open the door. He tried to call someone, but her legs no longer responded. The world became a distant sound, a confusing mix of echo, rapid breathing, and a dull hum that grew and grew and grew, until it stopped growing, and everything went silent. Clara fell to the ground. A few seconds passed before anyone entered. Minutes, perhaps. No one knows for sure. What is remembered is the scream. A student who had gone to touch up her makeup found Clara's feet sticking out from under the cubicle. Her skin was so white, it looked like marble. The girl bent down, touched Clara's ankle, and felt a chill that shouldn't have been there. "Help!" she shouted, her voice echoing throughout the hallway. "There's a girl who's fainted." The echo traveled from class to class. 2 teachers rushed to the bathroom. One of them, the biology teacher, who had noticed Clara's loss of energy weeks earlier, was the first to kneel beside her. She tried to call her name, though she wasn't entirely sure she recognized her instantly. Clara's loose hair covered part of her face. The teacher brushed it aside with trembling hands. "Clara, can you hear me?" he whispered fearfully. There was no response. Seeing her fragile, small body on the cold floor brought a lump to everyone's throat. One of the teachers ran to get help from the nurse's office. Another tried to hold Clara's head gently, as if a sudden movement could break her from the inside. An administrative assistant arrived with a blanket and covered her. No one knew exactly what to do. They only knew that something was terribly wrong. When the school nurse arrived, the first thing she noticed was Clara's weak pulse. She asked for space and knelt beside her. Her voice was firm, but her eyes betrayed her concern. "She's very dehydrated and cold, too cold." The teachers looked at each other, dismayed. None of them had imagined that Clara's situation was so serious. Not one, because Clara never caused any trouble, never drew attention to herself, was never a cause for concern, until that moment. Minutes later, the paramedics arrived. The entire school seemed to hold its breath. Clara was carefully lifted and placed on a stretcher, her head tilted slightly to one side. She appeared to be asleep, but a disturbing, almost ethereal kind of sleep. As they led her down the corridor, some students peered out of the doorways, their faces filled with surprise, guilt, and bewilderment. Many had seen her every day, walking, carrying books, existing silently. But none had seen, none of them had understood that behind their big sweaters and tired smiles was a body on the verge of collapse. "Who is it?" a voice asked. "It's Clara," another one replied. "Clara? The quiet one? The one who's always alone?" Nobody said it, but everyone was thinking the same thing. How did we not see it? On the way to the hospital, the paramedics exchanged tense phrases. "The pressure is at rock bottom. Do you know how long he was unconscious?" "No, nobody knows. We need to hurry." Clara, semi-conscious, heard everything as if it were coming from very far away. Voices submerged in water, fragmented, intermittent. She tried to open her eyes, but only managed a weak blink. Her mind, however, kept repeating the same phrase that had accompanied her for months. "You're not thin enough." It was a cruel voice, a familiar voice, a voice that did not fade even when his body said enough. Meanwhile, at school, the biology teacher stood in the empty bathroom. She stared at the floor where Clara had fallen, as if trying to understand what signs she had missed. She put her hands to her face and exhaled deeply. She wasn't the only one who felt guilty, because on that day, when Clara fell, nobody was prepared. Not even school, not even the teachers, not even the students, not even herself. But the collapse was not the end. It was the beginning of the collapse of all the lies that Clara had maintained for far too long, and the beginning of a truth that could no longer be hidden. The hospital smelled of disinfectant and unspoken things. The walls were a hostile white, the kind that doesn't comfort, but rather exposes. Clara lay on a stretcher, covered up to her chest by a rough sheet. She was breathing with difficulty, but she was breathing. That was all her mother needed to know when she came running, her purse hanging from one arm, and her face contorted with worry. The father, on the other hand, took longer. Not because he wasn't worried, but because he didn't understand. He didn't know how serious the situation was. He didn't even really know what was wrong with his daughter. He had only received one urgent call from the school, and another, more shaky one, from his wife. "It's Clara. She fainted. She's in the hospital. They're not telling me much." He drove as if the steering wheel had no weight, as if he were oblivious to the speed, the traffic lights. He only remembered the image he had of Clara that very morning, crossing the hallway in an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back, and a serene expression. There was nothing alarming, no silent scream he had noticed, but now she was there, standing in front of the emergency room door, hesitating before going in. When he did, something broke. Clara was smaller than I remembered, more fragile. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were closed with an expression of utter exhaustion, as if her body had decided to surrender after a long battle that no one had wanted to see. His mother turned to him with tears in her eyes. "Did you know something?" he asked, as if that phrase could reverse the scene in front of them. He did not answer. He just took one more step towards the bed, and she sat silently beside her daughter. She looked at her hands, so thin, so still, and then cry. It wasn't a loud cry. There were no screams or despair. It was a restrained, deep cry, the kind that comes from the very place where guilt resides, guilt one refuses to acknowledge. The tears fell slowly down her cheeks, as if each one carried the weight of all the times she hadn't asked, hadn't looked, hadn't listened. He remembered with brutal clarity The times Clara made excuses not to eat. The times she said she was full, that she had already eaten lunch at school. He remembered thinking, she's going through a strange phase. Teenagers are like that. And he continued watching television. He continued with his routines. He continued without looking any further. I didn't see it coming, she murmured, her voice breaking. I didn't see it. His wife sat beside him. She was devastated too, but in that moment she understood that they weren't alone, that this wasn't just one person's fault, but everyone's, the schools, their friends, a society that rewards thinness and punishes silence. But above all, it was a shared guilt between two parents who had believed that love was enough to provide shelter, food, and clean clothes. They hadn't learned to ask, "How are you?" with the genuine intention of listening. Hours passed. Clara was asleep, under observation. The doctors spoke to them carefully. It wasn't just a sudden health issue. It was something that had been developing for some time, something that would require intervention, psychological support, therapy, and monitoring. They spoke to them about symptoms, warning signs, and clinical terms that sounded like a foreign language. The father nodded, but he wasn't processing anything. I only had one fixed image in my mind: Clara falling in a school bathroom, alone, cold, fragile, and he was in his office, believing that everything was fine because his daughter was quiet. When they were allowed back into the room, Clara opened her eyes, barely, just enough to recognize them. "Hello, love," her mother whispered, with a broken smile. The father didn't speak. He didn't know how. He just bent down and took her hand. It was a hand he'd known since it was the size of his little finger, a hand he'd held when she was learning to walk, a hand that now seemed made of paper. Clara looked at him. For a second, her eyes filled with an emotion she couldn't name. It wasn't fear. It wasn't sadness. Ira, shame, as if he were apologizing for having brought them here, as if his collapse were a nuisance. And that's when the father understood that not only had he not seen her, nor had he taught her how to be seen. I had not shown her that she had the right to be heard, to be fragile, to cry, to be unwell without asking permission. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat by his bed, with his head in his hands. He reminisced about his childhood. He remembered how he had been taught that pain is kept inside, that one doesn't cry, that one endures it, and he realized that, unintentionally, he had passed that on to Clara. He had given her a house, yes, but not a refuge. He watched her sleep, her face serene, but her body exhausted, and he swore, without saying it out loud, that if she wanted to live, he would learn to see her, not like a silent teenager, not like a quiet daughter, but as a person who was asking for help without words. The hospital had a peculiar light in the mornings. It wasn't warm or welcoming, but it wasn't harsh either. It was an intermediate light, almost honest, revealing everything without embellishment. Clara woke up under that light after her first night in the hospital. The exhaustion was still there, clinging to her bones, but something had changed. She was no longer alone. Her mother was asleep in the recliner, her head tilted to one side, a blanket over her legs. Her father sat on the edge of the bed, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped together. He didn't seem to have slept at all. Every time Clara moved her fingers, he immediately looked up. "Good morning," she murmured, barely audible. He said nothing. He just squeezed her hand with reverential care, as if afraid of breaking it. Nothing more was needed. Clara understood. The nurse came in shortly after. She smiled kindly, with a kind of tenderness only seen in people accustomed to comforting silent suffering. She greeted everyone and then leaned toward Clara. "Today will be an important day for you," he said. "Let's start slowly, okay?" Clara knew what starting meant, and the weight of that word fell on his shoulders like a slab of stone. The first moment came when they placed a tray on the movable table next to her bed. It wasn't much food. It wasn't intimidating. It was normal. But for Clara, normality had become uncharted territory. His mother approached a little, her eyes filled with both hope and fear. The father remained still, observing, trying not to intervene. Clara looked at the tray as if it were a final exam she wasn't prepared for. I didn't feel hungry. I felt no desire. I felt something else. Panic. The nurse stayed by her side without pressuring her, without even touching her. "Just a little," she said softly. "You don't have to finish. Just take the first step. The first step." Clara swallowed and took the cutlery with a trembling hand. The feeling was strange, almost alien. For months, his identity had been shaped around emptiness, choosing the bare minimum, rejecting the obvious, hiding what is necessary. She felt that all her discipline, all her control, all her strength were built on that decision. To avoid, to cut back, to reduce. That plate in front of her wasn't food. It was a threat to everything he believed himself to be. Her mother held her breath. The father squinted, trying to hold back his tears. Clara brought the cutlery to her mouth. But when she did, a wave of emotions hit her with unexpected violence. Shame, fear, anger, sadness, and something worse. An internal, familiar, insistent voice. If you eat, you are weak. If you eat, everything you did was for nothing. If you eat, you fail. Clara put the cutlery away, unable to continue, and she began to cry. It was a silent cry, a cry that didn't ask for comfort, only understanding. Her mother ran to hug her, but her father gently raised a hand, stopping her. "Leave her alone," he whispered. "Let her feel." It was the first time anyone had acknowledged that Clara had the right to feel, to collapse, not to be strong. The nurse sat on the bed and gently stroked his arm. "You're not failing," he said gently. "You're healing, and healing also hurts." Clara squeezed her eyes shut, because yes, it hurt. It hurt more than hunger, more than just dizziness, more than the fall. It hurt to face what I had hidden, that food was never the enemy. The enemy was what she believed eating meant. The following hours were an emotional whirlwind. The doctor spoke with his parents. They spoke with Clara. They explained that her recovery would be a long road, full of ups and downs, full of good days and terrible days. That it wasn't just about her body, but also her mind. It wasn't a whim, a phase, or a superficial desire. It was a deep wound that required care, patience, and understanding. Clara listened, but half of the words slipped away without staying. The process felt too big, too intimidating. But what she did hear, with absolute clarity, was this phrase from the psychologist who evaluated her that afternoon. "What you are experiencing is not weakness. It's painful, and that pain deserves space, not punishment." Clara lowered her gaze. I didn't know what to answer, but something inside her, something small, almost imperceptible, like a spark hidden under rubble, ignited. It was the first time anyone had mentioned his struggle without trial, without asking for explanations, without calling it exaggerated. That night, when everyone had gone home except her mother, Clara tried again to eat a little, very little, an almost symbolic gesture. But this time, she didn't cry. His body trembled. Yes. His mind protested. Yes. But it didn't break. When he finished, he put the cutlery aside and took a deep breath. He felt guilty. She felt confused. She felt strange. But she also felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Little. Fragile. Like a flame against the wind. But there it was. And although Clara didn't know it yet, that small moment would be remembered as the first time she chose something other than punishment. The first time that, without fully understanding it, he began to choose life. Recovery is never a straight line. The doctors had warned her, the psychologist too, but nothing could have prepared her for what she would feel when her body began to change. When the weeks passed, and the hospital decided that Clara could continue treatment at home, with weekly visits, checkups, and therapy, it seemed like good news. Her mother cried with relief. Her father offered to rearrange his work schedule. Everyone was ready to help, except for her. Clara returned to her room one winter afternoon. She opened the door slowly, as if she weren't sure that the place still belonged to her. Everything was the same. Her desk tidy, her books stacked, her drawings folded in a folder. But she wasn't the same. The first day at home was strange, familiar, but uncomfortable. Outside, everything seemed the same. But inside, something had changed profoundly. Her body was different, a little fuller, a little warmer, a little more alive. But for Clara, change wasn't progress. It was a threat. Because with every gram regained, he felt he was losing part of the identity he had built over months. Her mother made a light soup that evening. Clara sat at the table with them, something she hadn't done in a long time. It seemed like a small gesture, but for the family, it was a silent miracle. She knew it, and that only increased the pressure she felt on her shoulders. He ate a little. He breathed. He stood firm. But while they talked about everyday things, school, work, her grandmother wanting to visit. Clara was only thinking about one thing. Her body was changing, and she didn't know how to live in it. The following days brought mixed emotions. Some were relatively calm. She could look at her reflection without feeling completely overwhelmed. She could walk without getting dizzy. She could read in the afternoon without falling asleep from exhaustion. Small steps forward that anyone would celebrate. But other days, those days were stormy. One Tuesday morning, Clara put on a sweater that used to be too big for her. Now it wasn't so big anymore. The edges didn't hang down the same way. The sleeves didn't hide her arms as much. Her breathing quickened. A strange pressure rose in her chest. A knot she didn't know how to untie. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was fear. Pure, paralyzing fear. Because in her mind, gaining weight was not healing. It was betrayal. The psychologist knew it. I was expecting it. It's not just about your body, she told her in one of the sessions. It's about the identity you built around the void. Healing means losing that identity and building a new one. That's scary. Very scary. It's normal. Clara listened, but she wasn't ready to accept it. He could barely hold the emotional mirror they placed in front of him. One day, after one of her medical consultations, the doctor checked her vital signs, compared notes, and congratulated her with a professional smile. You've gained 10 kilos. That's a big improvement. Clara felt the world shrink around her. Her mother smiled. The doctor made a note in her folder, and she swallowed hard, forcing herself not to show her despair. 10 kilos. 10 reasons to feel out of place. 10 reasons to feel that I had lost control. 10 reasons to want to disappear. When she got home, she locked herself in her room. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't break anything. She just sat on the bed, hugging her legs, gently rocking as if trying to soothe a smaller, frightened version of herself. The door opened silently. It was his father. "Can I?" he asked from the frame. Clara didn't respond, but he came in anyway and sat beside her, leaving a respectful space between them. He didn't say anything profound or give a prepared speech. He just stayed there, present, calm, breathing with her. After a while, Clara spoke in a whisper. "I don't know who I am now." His father closed his eyes for a moment, touched by the confession. "I didn't know who you were either," he admitted honestly. "Now I want to learn, if you'll let me." She looked at him. It was the first time she'd heard anything like this from him. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't pity. It was vulnerability, a genuine surrender. Clara felt for the first time in a long time that she didn't have to carry what she felt alone. "I'm scared," she whispered. He nodded. "Me too." The tears finally came, not like a desperate torrent, but like a slow thaw, and her father, without invading her, moved a little closer. "You're not losing," he said softly. "You're coming back." The following days were no easier. Clara still trembled when she faced her reflection. Sometimes she avoided mirrors altogether. Other times she glanced at them out of the corner of her eye, as if she feared the glass would reflect back a truth she preferred not to see. There were mornings when she woke up feeling the weight of her new body like a sack full of stones, difficult to carry. Others, she felt a slight comfort in the warmth of her cheeks, in the strength that timidly returned to her legs. It was a daily battle, silent, invisible to most, but not for her, nor for those who were with her now. Recovery, he understood, came at a price. The grief for the version of herself that she had to give up. A broken version, yes, but familiar. One night, while brushing her hair in front of the bathroom mirror, Clara did something unexpected. She held her gaze. He did not flee. He was not punished. They just looked at each other. And although she still didn't understand who that new girl was, who was watching her from the reflection, for the first time, he felt no need to disappear. He only felt tiredness and a very faint spark of hope. Recovery did not restore his identity. It forced him to create a new one. And Clara, although scared, was beginning to accept that this was also living. Her body had always been her enemy. Or at least, that's what Clara believed. For as long as she could remember, her relationship with it had been one of resistance, of correction, of silent warfare. She had never listened to it. She had only told it to shut up. But something changed one ordinary morning, without announcement, without drama. She woke up before her mother, with the first rays of sunlight filtering through the curtains. The room was warm. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel that oppressive anxiety when she opened her eyes. She sat up in bed, stretched her legs, and felt a slight pull in her muscles. It wasn't pain, era force. Shy, yes, but strength at last. She got up and walked barefoot to the window. Outside, the street was beginning to stir too. A neighbor sweeping the sidewalk, a dog barking in the distance, a child running with a backpack. Life. He pressed his forehead against the cold glass. He closed his eyes. He took a deep breath, and for the first time, she didn't feel like her body was a cage. The day continued as usual. She had breakfast with her mother, a slice of toast, some fruit, and hot tea. She ate slowly. Her mother said nothing, but her eyes filled with a restrained emotion. She had learned not to pressure her, not to intrude on that fragile process. She simply accompanied her. That day, Clara decided to go for a walk alone. She put on headphones, chose a soft playlist, instrumental, nostalgic, and went out. She walked aimlessly through streets she'd known since childhood. She stopped in front of a bakery she used to love as a little girl. She watched the warm loaves through the glass. She felt no fear, nor any intense desire. Alone, curiosity. She continued walking to the park. She sat on a wooden bench under a tree and let the sun caress her skin. She closed her eyes again, and then something unexpected happened. He felt hungry. Not anxiety, not an overwhelming emergency. Hunger, a quiet emptiness, a whisper from within, a natural sign, as if her body, after so long, was trusting her again, and he listened to it. When she got home, she prepared something simple. She didn't think about it too much. She didn't weigh it. She didn't measure it precisely. She just opened the cupboard, chose a couple of things, and improvised. When she finished, she sat alone in the kitchen. He took the first bite, and something softened inside. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't euphoria. Era presence. I was eating, and he was there. In the next therapy session, she talked about it, about how she had begun to feel new things, not necessarily good or bad, only new ones. "It's as if I'd lived for years in a closed house," he said, "and suddenly I opened a window." The psychologist smiled. "Your body is not a battlefield," he replied. "It's your home, and it's time to make peace with it." Clara remained silent, not because she had nothing to say, but because those words resonated differently. She understood them with her body, not just her mind. The days continued with their ups and downs. There were moments of doubt. There were unexpected tears in front of the mirror. There were days when food still weighed more than its flavor, but there was also progress. He wrote again. Something I had given up years ago. Not a diary, not a meal plan. Stories, characters, words that came out without demands. In one of those texts, she wrote a scene where a girl was walking along the edge of a lake. She was afraid of falling, but she didn't fall. She walked. Slowly, yes. Hesitantly, too. But she kept going. And in the end, he went into the water, not to sink, to float. Clara cried when she finished it. I didn't know if it was about her, but she knew that somehow she was healing her. She started laughing again with her mother in the kitchen, joking with her younger brother, exchanging messages with Luna, who was also in treatment, in another city, with other doctors, but fighting the same battle. They sent each other short audio messages, fragments of poetry, photographs of things that brought them peace. Once, Luna sent him a message. "Today I wore a sleeveless shirt, and I didn't hate myself." Clara responded with a heart, and in that short conversation, they both understood that, although the path was individual, they were not alone. One afternoon, Clara found an old letter among her things. It was in a hidden notebook, the same one she used to record her weight. The letter was brief, written in shaky handwriting. "Dear Clara, you can't trust anyone. Your body is your enemy. You have to be perfect. You have to disappear." He stared at her for a long time. She didn't cry. He didn't get angry. He just took out a new sheet of paper and wrote an answer. "Dear Clara, you were scared. Me too. But I no longer need to disappear. Today I just want to exist, with all that I am, with all the pain, with all that remains to be healed." She folded the letter. She put it away, and he took a deep breath, because for the first time, she wasn't listening to the cruel voice in her head. I was listening to something deeper, something true, our body. And although he still found it difficult to fully trust, I knew that at least I had begun to listen to it. The house was quiet, not a sad silence, but a gentle one. Clara sat on the edge of her bed, legs crossed, a warm mug in her hands. It was Sunday morning. Outside, the sky was that clear blue that seems like a promise. She looked at herself in the full-length mirror her mother had rehung weeks before. She hadn't asked for it, nor had she complained. It had simply been there one day, hanging on the wall. Clara didn't avoid it, but she didn't seek it out either. For days, she walked past it without stopping, until, little by little, she began to look at herself, sometimes out of the corner of her eye, sometimes closely. That morning was different. She stood up. She walked to the mirror. She stood in front of it. And he didn't hide. She didn't look for the angles that punished her. He didn't pinch his skin. No old mantras of hate were repeated. They just looked at each other, with a mixture of neutrality, strangeness, and respect. Because that body I saw there, with its new curves, its rediscovered shapes, its regained strength, was no longer the enemy. He was a witness to his fall, yes, but also of his return. It wasn't a sudden revelation. There was no dramatic music, no tears, no inner monologues, just an unexpected calm, as if, after so much war, he could finally let his guard down. Clara understood that she had not beaten the disease. That difficult days still lay ahead, intrusive thoughts, memories that hurt, but he also understood that he was no longer in the same place. Before, every day was a competition with herself. Now, every day was a choice, imperfect, incomplete, but real. Her mother called her from the kitchen. "Breakfast is ready." Clara smiled. She descended the stairs slowly, feeling the warmth of the wooden steps beneath her feet. A simple scene awaited her on the table. Toast, fruit, tea, and something more. A place for herself. A space she no longer had to earn through sacrifice. It was his. For existing. For being there. He sat down and ate. Without drama. Without fear. And when he finished, his mother asked him with a smile, "How did you sleep?" Clara thought for a second. Like someone who no longer wants to disappear. Her mother remained silent. She looked at her with restrained tenderness. She said nothing more. There was no need. That afternoon, Clara went for a walk with her father. She had insisted. She wanted to make up for lost time. They walked side by side, aimlessly, talking about anything and everything. He told her about a movie he had seen. She told her about a book she wanted to start. At a corner, they passed a shop window with a mannequin dressed in summer clothes. Clara looked at it, not with desire, not with envy, just with curiosity. "I would have compared myself to that before," she said, without thinking. Her father looked at her, not fully understanding. "And now?" Clara shrugged. "Now I'm just wondering if I'd like to wear that blouse. And if not, I'll keep walking." He smiled. He didn't answer, but there was something like pride in his expression. Not because of its weight, not because of their appearance, but not for their honesty, for their clarity, for his reality. That night, Clara opened her notebook and wrote a sentence. "I no longer strive to be perfect. I just want to be real, with who I am, even though it still hurts, with what's missing, and with that, I no longer need to hide." He closed the notebook. He turned off the light. She lay back on the bed and hugged the pillow as if it were a part of herself. And when he closed his eyes, he didn't think about numbers. She didn't think about sizes. He didn't think about control. She thought of her body as a home, one that, for the first time, wanted to inhabit. There was something Clara never told anyone. During the darkest months, when hunger was her measure of success and loneliness her only faithful companion, Clara used to write letters. They weren't letters to her parents, or to her friend Luna, or to some unseen therapist. They were letters for the girl who was. In them, he asked for forgiveness for hating his body. He explained to her why he had stopped playing, laughing, and looking at the world with curiosity. He promised her that one day, maybe, he could save her. Most of those letters ended up crumpled at the bottom of a drawer, or burned in the bathroom sink. Clara never thought she would have the courage to write one last letter, but he did it. One afternoon, standing by the window, as the sun painted her room soft orange, Clara took a blank piece of paper and wrote, "To you, the one who still lives inside me. You weren't weak for suffering. You were brave for persevering. You weren't monstrous. You were just hurt. I don't promise perfection today. I only promise never to abandon you again." He put the letter in a box, not to hide it, but to remember her, to be read when relapse comes knocking, when the mirror lies again, when loneliness tries to disguise itself as discipline. That box was not a symbol of closure. It was a commitment, the kind of commitment that isn't visible on the skin, but that sustains the soul. Clara does not consider herself a success story. He doesn't give motivational talks. She doesn't upload before and after photos, because what she regained cannot be measured in kilos, nor shown on social media. He recovered his right to exist, to feel incomplete, laughing without permission, eat without punishment, not to be perfect, to simply be. And if you, who are watching this, recognized yourself in any word, if you felt that this story was too similar to your own, if you thought no one would understand the pain of living at war with your reflection, I only ask one thing of you. Don't be silent. Don't isolate yourself. Don't think that being broken makes you less deserving of love. Your body is not a punishment. It's a battlefield, but it can also be home. If this story touched you, comment below. Where are you watching this from? And what time is it in your city? Because perhaps, by writing that, you'll remind someone else that she is not alone.